So this podcast is on meiosis, but before I get into meiosis, I want to review the whole point of mitosis. So we learned already that mitosis creates identical cells. So here we have one cell, and after the end of mitosis, we end up with two identical cells. And my question for you is this: if mitosis creates identical cells, then how come our children look different? Okay, so just think about that. Now, the answer to this question is that there is another process, and this process is called meiosis. Okay, meiosis is how the sperm and how the egg cells are formed. It is different from mitosis because meiosis does not occur in somatic cells. Meiosis does not occur in body cells. So the examples of these are liver cells, red blood cells, white blood cells, heart cells, kidney cells, muscle cells. Anything that is not egg and not sperm is a somatic cell. So meiosis does not happen in somatic cells. It happens in sex cells, okay? Such as the sperm and the egg. And because the sperm and the egg are genetically different, they're very different from one another, we are going to create offspring that are different as well. Okay, so on your study guide, you have some blanks. It says meiosis in females occurs in the ovaries. So the first one is ovaries. In males, it occurs in the testes. Okay. Meiosis happens in reproductive cells, also known as germ cells. So another name for sperm and egg or sex cells is a germ cell. Okay, it always starts off as a germ cell. And another thing we just learned is that meiosis happens in non-somatic cells, so cells that are not in the human body systems, other than the reproductive ones, right? So now we need to understand how meiosis generally works. So if you look at this diagram right here, that's in your notes, you have a parent cell. And what happens is you make more DNA. So you undergo a round of DNA replication. And then you're going to go through one cell division. This one cell division right here is called meiosis 1. Okay, it's very similar to mitosis, but it's not. Okay, it's going to go through meiosis 1. And what's neat about meiosis is it's going to go through a second division. So in mitosis, we went through one division. In meiosis, we're actually going to go through two. So from these two cells, we're going to make 4 cells total. And these are not identical to the parent cell. These germ cells are going to have half the DNA from the parent cell. So it's going to have half the DNA, and instead of 2, we have 4 of them. And they're all different from one another. And this is why we look different from our parents, because our germ cells are different. So if we go back to our notes, we're going to fill in some more blanks. It says, at the end of meiosis, there are 4 daughter cells. These daughter cells are not identical. Okay, they're different. Each daughter cell will have half the amount of chromosomes. So it will have 23 chromosomes each. And it makes sense because if you merge an egg and a sperm, it's 23 plus 23, which is 46, which is essentially the amount of DNA or chromosomes found in a body cell, which eventually will turn into a human baby, right? A fetus and then a baby. So it also says in our notes the daughter cells are not identical because of something called crossing over. So crossing is the next blank, which is when homologous chromosomes exchange genetic information. Okay, so here in this podcast, I have an example of crossing over. So here, what happens is that homologous chromosomes, one from mom, one from dad, they're going to line up and they literally swap. They swap little segments, little pieces. And this is called crossing over. And because of this, the sex cells are not going to be identical. This does not happen in mitosis. This only happens in meiosis 1, the first division of meiosis. Okay, more specifically, prophase 1 of meiosis. Now, we look at the second part of our notes. It says daughter cells of meiosis are not identical because the second point, which is because meiosis occurs in the reproductive organs. Cells have half the number of original chromosomes, which means it has 23 chromosomes each, which is what I just said. When chromosome pairs separate, they do this randomly. Okay, so here's the next set of blanks. They do this randomly. The 4 daughter cells are called gametes. Okay, so the 4 daughter cells that are produced are called gametes. So these right here are your gametes. In males, they're called your sperm, and females, it's the egg. Okay, all gametes contain one set of chromosomes. When you have one set of chromosomes, meaning 23, we call this set haploid. Okay, hap, think of it, it kind of sounds like half. Haploid means half. Okay, our gametes are haploid. So if we look at this image again, all of these right here are haploid. These guys are still considered diploid. Okay, which I'll explain in a bit. So here it is again. Haploid, we're here, fertilization. So egg and sperm, which are haploid, are involved in sexual reproduction. The process in which they join is called fertilization. So the egg and the sperm merge, and they're going to form one cell. And this one cell is called a zygote, which is the first cell that is made in order to create a new organism. Because during fertilization, an egg and sperm combine, we're going to have 23 plus 23 chromosomes merged together to form 46 chromosomes. All human somatic cells, which are body cells, should have 46 chromosomes. So our liver, our white blood cells, our red blood cells, our liver, our muscle cells, our brain cells, they're all going to have 46 chromosomes. Okay, our gametes, our sex cells, are going to have 23 chromosomes. Okay, so all human body cells should have 46 chromosomes in the nucleus. Because all somatic cells have 2 sets of chromosomes, one from dad, one from mom, you are going to have homologous pairs, and these pairs are called diploid. Think of di or diploid. Think of di as 2 or double. Okay, so you're doubling the number. Okay, so that basically ends this podcast. A lot of concepts, right? Again, meiosis, you're making 4 cells. They're not identical because of crossing over. They're not identical because of also sometimes mutations do happen, but most of the time it's because of crossing over. And they're going to be haploid, half the number of chromosomes. When they fertilize, it's going to form a zygote, and then it's no longer haploid, it is now diploid. So I know it's a lot, but in order to help you understand this a little better, I want you guys to fill in this summary with words. It will be a little challenging because there are multiple words you could possibly use, but just try your best, and then we'll go over it. Okay, so go ahead and try that on your own, and then check your answers. Okay. Okay, now that you tried, here are the answers. So meiosis creates germ cells, sex cells, or void outer cells. Any of those would work. Meiosis involves two cell divisions, which result in haploid cells. Then they're different because of crossing over and random separation during meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. And these 4 cells that are made have 23 chromosomes, and they're haploid. Okay, they're haploid. So you guys have questions on the left side of these Cornell notes. I would like for you guys to answer those, just so you guys can practice using the notes that you have. Okay, so go ahead and do that.